This week, we're going to take a little bit of a look at injury. And there's a couple of research papers that I want to dig into today to have a wee look at different factors causing injuries and what you can do, the lessons you can learn from these to apply to your training. So let's dig into it. Lessons from the lab. So some interesting research investigating training related risk factors of overuse injuries. It was carried out in Finland, and it took 446 of Finland's top male and female endurance athletes. These were swimmers, cross-country skiers, long-distance runners, and what they found was some interesting results. It was found that athletes who had less than 2 recovery days per week were 5 times more likely to get an overuse injuries compared to those that had more recovery. Which is quite interesting because normally in training programs there is 1 recovery day a week is sort of standard. In that same study, it was also found that athletes who trained more than 700 hours per year, which equates to approximately 13.5 hours per week on average, they were 2 times more likely to sustain an overuse injuries compared to athletes who trained less. So thinking about those two, how does your training stack up with those? Do you have 1 recovery day per week, or do you have 2, or do you have 1 complete recovery day and then a sort of lighter day? Depending on the athletes that I work with, I sort of balance it around that mark somewhere, depending on who they are, their training level and what their goals are. But 1 complete recovery day per week is a must-have. And then potentially another lighter training day in there somewhere. Now, in some different research, but sort of related to this recovery and injury thing as well, they looked at sleep. Now, everybody knows that sleep is very, very important, and if you don't know that sleep is very important, I'm telling you now, sleep is very, very important. But just how important sleep is for injury is something that we didn't really know. It looks like sleep is a really, really important risk factor in managing and preventing injuries. A really interesting study looked at adolescent athletes and showed that those who slept for less than 8 hours per night on average were 2 times more likely to sustain an injury than those who slept more than 8 hours. That's quite incredible in itself. So you can decrease your risk of injury 2-fold just by getting more than 8 hours of sleep each night. So if you're not clocking up 8 hours of sleep, then that would be a very, very easy and logical place to start. A lot of people get out there, have a look at, can I get compression garments? Can I take this supplement? Can I do this? Can I do that? Looking for all of these silver bullets to help improve their performance, reduce injury, make them faster. But they're not even doing the basics right. So 8 hours of sleep per night is key. You need to be getting more than that. If you're getting less than 8 hours of sleep per night, this research shows that you're 2 times more likely to get an injury. So have a think about that. How does your sleep match up? How much are you guys actually sleeping out there? Write a wee comment below. How much sleep are you getting per night on average? It'll be interesting to find out what all of you listeners are doing. So what does this actually mean for us in the real world? It's all very nice having these lab results, but what lessons can we learn from them? So the takeaway message, while these findings, I guess, are 2 research papers that are associated with injuries, they are associations, they're not causations, meaning that if you don't get enough sleep, it doesn't mean you're going to get injured. But what it means is that in general, if you're not getting enough sleep it is going to start creeping in there, the likelihood that you can, improve your risk of getting injured, if you like, increase your risk of getting injured. So it's not just about training more, as that first research article told us. It's about training more effectively and potentially a little smarter, balancing that training and recovery. So if you're training 13.5 hours a week or more, which a lot of endurance athletes are, then you need to pay particular attention to your recovery, your mobility, your stretching, your nutrition, your hydration, and your sleep to support that training that you're doing. When you're planning your overall season and build-up, make sure you take into consideration not only your training, but also all of the other factors in your life. Because what you'll probably find from these results in the real world, if you're training more than 13.5 hours a week, which is a pretty solid training load, that it's not just the training that's getting impacted, it's the sleep, because you're juggling work, you're juggling potentially study with family, and while you're getting in the training, you're not getting in the stuff that supports the training, you're not getting in that recovery. So have a think about that. While it might not just be as clear cut as that 13.5 hours per week, or that 700 hours a year of training, it's the stuff that surrounds that, the stuff that you're not doing because you're putting in the time training. So it's not just about not training more to not get injured, it's potentially the things that are missing out because of that training you are doing. So there we have it. That is lessons from the lab for this week.